Avec Philippe Séguin du bureau d'enquête, nous vous présentons ce soir à JE le portrait et l'histoire de cet homme que vous voyez derrière nous. D'apparence plutôt banale, mais détrompez-vous. Un homme qui était au fond une froide et redoutable machine à tuer. Le machine à tuer.
Who is this man who's a véritable machine à tuer? I can name so many in Québec, therefore I can go on forever. Hells Angels, Claude Berger, Jean-Damien Perron, Clermont Carrier, Yvon Tanguay, Sylvain Vachon, Ghislain Valeron, Claude Berger, François Vachon. These are only a drop in the bucket from 2009 to 2015 of those who were arrested and who pled guilty to charges against them. Have you ever wanted to hear these men speak to you? On penalty of death, they cannot do so, and so their voices shall remain anonymous. You see, on April 15th of 2009, there were roughly 2,000 police officers who rounded roughly 156 Hells Angels and their associates in Opération Shark UC, the biggest operation in Quebec. There were 111 remaining full-patch Hells Angels left in Quebec after the sweep-up with their 45 gang members. And so police eradicated 5 chapters. And of all those, 105 have pled guilty to charges, including murder or conspiracy to commit murder, while there was still 8 at large in 2015. And so today, we shall go back in time in 2009, when they were locked up, what some of them shared secretly behind bars. We shall not know who these members are, or who their associates are, but rest assured they were validated 100%. I bet you've never heard of them, but today I will bring them back to life for your curiosity. The following was carried out by PhD students of the Faculty of Arts and Science in the School of Criminology at the University of Montreal by Séverine Petit. Today, he shall be immortalized in the canals of history, unburied by the Franco-supremacist mess, because that's the only reason you've never heard of this document, or most of the interviews which I translate for you. And I'm your host, Forger, also known as the Crafty One, the most hated man in Quebec. To begin, one must understand that the document describes the situation of biker gangs and how the general public acts like an amplifier. What amplification do? They amplify the reputation. They create a myth of the big bad biker. This shall evidently be seen by the quotes which I will bring back to life. The words that were uttered on those very lips of bikers in 2009 within the prison cells of Donnacona. In these walls, in the cold hearts of men, where sinister plots are devised by degenerate men, with too much time on their hands, where some few reform, others plot takeovers. They care not about you and I, for in their hearts and minds, they are not your friend. Yet they brainwash the gullibles to worship them as idols. In these walls, it's a war against the mind, my friends, where time seems to fall while the world turns around them. The inmates are frozen in time, and so they communicate with the devil in their chambers, while some resist him. Regarde bien, aujourd'hui, on va te raconter nos belles petites histoires. Et tu vois, à un moment donné, entre 1973 et 1988, il y avait environ 63 groupes de motards, which is a statement confirmed by la Sûreté du Québec. And after an expansion from 1973 into 1977, the number passes somewhere between 600 members to 900. And then the population stabilizes at around 800 between 1978 and 1982. But somewhere along the line, between 1983 to 1988, very few new groups appear. And so going forward after 1988, the number of bikers drops to 300. And so the question is, why? There are many hypotheses to explain this scenario that unfolded. One could possibly explain less attraction to the biker lifestyle, or the increase in penalties by our justice system. Because I need to remind you, for those who don't know the history of Quebec crime, in approximately 1978, we had an inquiry on organized crime.
La justice lui demande de s'expliquer en compromettant lors d'une audience publique devant une commission d'enquête spéciale. L'interrogatoire mené par un panel de juges est télévisé. Vous devez faire une déposition. Je ne le ferai pas. Vous refusez? Je ne dis pas ça. Mais vous ne ferez pas de déposition. Résultat. Décidez de rejeter votre demande. En conséquence, vous êtes déclaré coupable d'outrage de la commission d'enquête. Paolo Violi.
And moving forward after that, Quebec was never the same. The bikers had to contend with the new situation. The mob was the superior force at the time, and they had been decimated. A new era was upon them. In a similar fashion, a new wave was hitting the bikers in Quebec. Hence, after that, the police became a lot more systematic in their approach. The lawless attraction of the biker lifestyle no longer had the risk-to-reward ratios, and so less people joined. And then I say you must factor in the Lennoxville purge and the bad publicity it generated. Why would you want to join if they killed their own brothers? Even American bikers were confused.
J'aimerais ça que tu montres le tatouage de Plamondon sur ta jambe. C'est qui ce personnage-là pour toi?
Ça, là, c'est une personne qui m'a aidé beaucoup. C'est un gars qui a un gros cœur. Puis moi, je le respecte beaucoup.
Si jamais il te demande un service, tu vas le faire pour lui?
Mon service, s'il me demande de mettre son nez dans la laveuse, je vais le mettre.
S'il te demande de tuer quelqu'un pour lui, vas-tu le faire?
Où t'en vas, toi, là?
C'est une question.
Où t'en vas, là? Hey, pousse-toi le fou.
Non, mais s'il te demande, par exemple, de battre quelqu'un pour lui, vas-tu le faire?
Pourquoi il demanderait ça? C'est pas un homme de même. C'est pas un gars qui va demander à quelqu'un de battre quelqu'un. Mais l'autre, oui, t'en vas.
Non, mais en prison, il y a des règlements de compte, il y a des batailles, comme dans la société.
Non, c'est rien des mythes, ça. C'est rien des mythes, ça.
Ouais.
C'est pas un homme qui va faire battre le monde, c'est l'autre.
Le machine à tuer. L'homme qui était au fond une froide et redoutable, le machine à tuer.
And so what makes a man a redoubtable killing machine? Let's hear in their own voice, or rather in mine, but their own words. The club had changed. In the 1970s, it was biking and brotherhood. If you had a tire that broke out, you had 48 hours to repair it. If not, you would get a fine. It was a big problem that you had your bike. You were allowed 30 days without it. Today, your bike is far from being a priority behind money and the power. Certain members didn't have a bike when they joined in, tripping on the bikes. The world was consuming and I was smoking. The biker clubs were flourishing. There were so many in all major cities in Quebec, even small villages. And I frequented all these environments. I was young. I had a brand new Harley. And that's why I met all these people. And I met them. In that time, it was a trip. It was fun. We were tripping together. We had cash. We sold a bit of drugs to make a little bit of money. But it was more to consume than for anything else. And in the 1990s, that's where everything changed. I started to frequent those guys, the Hells Angels. For me, it was the same trip as back in the old days. But for money. Super money. You were there to make the money, to do business. Rather, before, it was just to trip. Says Alain, the anonymous biker. Rial, the previous biker, says, when I first joined the bikers, the majority of them had legitimate jobs. Certain no, but one morning when I was at the local of the Trois-Rivières chapter, Melou Roy had called me, and he had given me an appointment in Montreal at a dealership of automobiles, the one that was located right in front of the Hippodrome. In his opinion, it was time that we started spoiling ourselves, hence changing cars. And I remember Rick Valley had just came back to see us. And there it was, a bunch of very expensive cars. Lamborghinis, Mercedes, Jaguar, Ferrari, and Bentley. The car salesmen were in heaven, because on that day all three of us had bought for about $350,000 in total, and a kilo of cocaine at the time sold for $45,000 in wholesale, and its purity was 90 to 95%, but in the street, the purity was more like 25 to 35, hence the drug was 3 times less pure. However, for 1 full kilo of cocaine, that was a total of 5,000 dosages. And by cutting it with unhealthy agents, we were able to make around 15,000 doses. And those doses were sold at $13 each, which netted us a profit of $195,000. Hence, if we remove $45K from the start, we end with $150,000 in gross profits. It was crazy, the money that I made in that. It's so paying. I give you an example. Me, I had 250 clients. I make $5 a quarter, and I sell a minimum of 250 quarters per day. And that's only when clients take 1 quarter. $1,250 net in your pockets. And so, Crafty One, imagine they didn't stop growing since the 70s. Their profits had expanded to astronomical amounts. To give you an example, during Shark QC, they only seized $5 million in cash, with dozens of kilograms of cocaine, marijuana, and hashish. And that was nothing. And with that much money came a burden. You have the cops on your tail, and your brothers become greedy bastards. The hunger is never satiated fully in the never-ending quest for eternal money. But then, when do we stop exaggerating our needs? An anonymous biker named Sylvain, which we know today is probably Boulanger. There was exaggerations made. Yes, we made mistakes. The war, at the end of the day, it was about money. It was no longer a question about bikes. It was about money. As for motorcycles, you could do it anywhere. But let's say you make 200 a week. I'm gonna invent numbers here, but let's just say you make 200 a week trafficking. And at a certain point, you make 2,000 per week. Now, you don't want to come back to 200 now. And now, everyone sees you and they have the same target. everyone's pushing to make that 2,000 now. And now you made that money, and that's easy money. You don't ever feel like going back to work legitimately. You see, those of us who have the old school values, they're already retired in Cuba or in the Dominican Republic, and they bike all day long over there. And you see, there's a rule in that place. If you want to be there with them, you cannot traffic at all. And then I look around me, my entourage, the lingerie, Versace, big car. Why not just one car? Why do you need multiple big cars? I would enter their homes and I tell myself, are you in a magazine? Did you win the jackpot in one fell swoop? Tabarnak! What the fuck is all this? Where did you get the permit to do this? Aren't they a little bit disconnected from reality? And they'd say, and that's how it goes in the year 2000. But me, I tell myself, they do all this, and yet they're being watched by others. You know, when we would talk about business, we would do it right next to each other's ears. But now, they were talking in company of other people, over here and over there. And I'd ask them, oh really? You have a company? What kind of company do you have? And they'd answer me, well, a company's a company, man. Really, it was drugs. And they'd talk about it nonchalantly in the restaurant bars, like it was nothing. And I'd tell them, wow, looks like the year 2000 bug has affected all you bastards. Indeed, they were living off the profits of drugs by the year 2000. For example, in 1998, here are some numbers that were brought out from the Operation Springtime 2001. April, 329 kilograms. August, 500 kilograms. September, 300 kilograms. And December, 200 kilograms of cocaine, which came from Colombia to the US and then smuggled into Canada. And so the question becomes, how do they wash all this cash? The activities of the Hells Angels were being divulged by a rat. Many of them, or the majority, had enterprises that served as laundering vehicles. Limousine companies, bars, restaurants, tanning salons, cell phone companies, and rental properties. Yes, you heard that right. Cell phone companies. In fact, on March 5, Kane reported to his handlers that the Hells Angels in Quebec had bought shares in a telephone company called Ericsson. In fact, the techniques used consists of the following. They would pay lawyers to go open corporations in foreign countries such as the Bahamas, the Cayman Islands, Jersey, or Panama. And then these lawyers would open themselves personally bank accounts for those corporations in banks in Switzerland. And the sums will be deposited across a Canadian bank in Canadian currency. And at no time were these sums in cash, actually. They were transferring gold. They were purchasing gold, my friend, which has always been a useful tool for narco-traffickers, until Bitcoins, that is. And lastly, another strategy was to invest that money in small cap companies listed on the NASDAQ. In fact, one member of the Nomads had created in 1998 a technology company, and it was in the year 2000 that this company was listed at 25 cents on the exchange, and within 2 weeks it had reached $3.81, while having received $700,000 in credits, tax credits. The company's business was flourishing in Quebec, Europe, Russia, and the United States, but it did declare bankruptcy after the Operation Springtime of 2001.